decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live on YouTube and in 1 hour's time live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show here at Red River X Place, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Ezra Ginsburg on my left, with Dave Minuk on my right.
We haven't been able to do that for a while.
Exactly.
Don't touch us, Drew.
Never touch me again. We say good morning and welcome to the program. Gentlemen, this is fun. We're live here, like I said, at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show. The vendors are setting up. It's the proverbial calm before the storm because you know in about 1 hour's time, when the doors open at 10 a.m., it's going to be absolute chaos here. Don't worry, folks. We have armed guards at the ready in case anyone wants to swarm us, but usually that'll be more for negative reasons than positive reasons. But anyways, thrilled to be here. Have to start off the show by giving the absolute most props to our former producer, come back to being current producer. He was with us at TSN 1290. Tim Debenham is basically solely responsible for the fact that this is live on air right now.
Absolutely.
And that we're all on one camera, first of all. That's impressive enough. And that we look as good as we do. Tim deserves all the credit for that. So a big props to Timmy, who's off screen right now, but maybe we'll get him on screen before the show wraps up to give him his absolute just desserts. Anyways, gentlemen, good to see you in person. It's been now, it's been a regular occurrence now that we're doing this show back in person.
Yeah.
Soon we'll just do it on Pembina Highway again, really get back. Yeah, I know.
I said to Ezzy, there is an appeal to being able to do it at home because, of course, it's a little bit easier in that regard. But honestly, it's when Eric approached me to do the show, I thought, why wouldn't we? I mean, what a cool opportunity for us to get together and for us to be able to meet people again. We've got great stuff. I've got a box full of gear to give away. Icy toques. We've got some Seagram stuff. So we got lots to give away. We got a lot of hockey to talk about. So really looking forward to this opportunity and the day itself.
There you go. Exactly right. Mr. Ginsburg, good to see you. This is violating your restraining order being this close to me, but we'll overlook that in the interests of solidarity and support of the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show.
Like you said, Drew, it's like old times, right? Like I always used to sit to your left or right. I forget what it was, but we always used to be in studio together. So it's kind of bringing it back. And you mentioned we got producer Tim here who's making us look good and who set us up on the stage here. And yeah, it's going to be tons of fun. There's going to be lots of families here. I saw axe throwing a little bit behind us, about 20 feet behind us. So hopefully there's not going to be any axes that are going over us.
What we were joking about earlier is that at some point during the broadcast, you're going to disappear and you're just going to start hucking axes at Dave and I from a distance.
No,
but
never.
Fortunately, I've seen your accuracy when it comes to throwing, so I think Dave and I are probably
the problem is he'll hit Timmy, though, and then we'll be off the air. That's right.
Boys, I'm going to stay as far away from any axes as possible. We're talking hockey. We're keeping it real. Maybe we might do a little fishing, might pick up a few reels, but yeah, we're going to keep it to hockey.
We'll keep it to hockey because it is a Winnipeg Jets game day on top of everything else, an afternoon affair, a matinee this afternoon as the Winnipeg Jets welcome back another Original Six team. Their division rival, Chicago Blackhawks, will be in town for a 2 o'clock start, which of course means it's a double dose of Illegal Curve, 4:45 with the Illegal Curve post-game show back on this afternoon. Divorce proceedings from our significant others will begin at 6 p.m. tonight, so if you know any good family law attorneys, you can send them our way.
I know a few.
Yeah, you know a few. Exactly right. Anyways, gentlemen, let's get started talking about the Winnipeg Jets, of course. Been a quiet week for the team. We knew that this was sort of the lull in the schedule the next couple weeks. Last Sunday, of course, was the game in Vegas that wrapped up the 3-game road trip, the Connor Hellebuyck show that has been talked about a lot since that game. Of course, it talked about on our post-game show, Dave M. Mm-hmm. And then the players themselves and Rick Bowness, talked about it when they were on the ice Tuesday, Wednesday, and lead up to Thursday's victory over the Montreal Canadiens, talking about how the play level that they showed on the road trip, where they got 5 out of 6 points, is just not sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, that was what you wanted to hear. Because in previous years, under a different head coach, you might have said, yes, well, we got the point, so that's all that matters.
We stayed in the fight.
We stayed in the fight. It's like, well, you stayed in the fight for that game, but you didn't really stay in the fight on any sort of long-term basis. Rick Bowness was, perfectly on point and perfectly honest when he said, look, yeah, we're happy with the points, but we know that that's not going to be a way that we can move forward, and we can't continue to play like that. Our effort hasn't been good enough. Our play on the ice hasn't been good enough, and I think that was the sort of big message in the lead up to Thursday night's victory over the Montreal Canadiens, Ezzy.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well there, Drew. Like, the Jets probably have at least 3 or 4 points that they shouldn't have this year. So you're happy with how many points you've banked already. You're very happy with where you are in the standings. But you mentioned the game against the Chicago Blackhawks, which is coming up in, I believe, half an hour. No, I'm joking, but it's at 2:00 Central Time. But I mean, the Blackhawks are only 1 point behind the Jets. I believe they've played one more game. But needless to say, I think we all expected the Blackhawks to be not only at the bottom of the Central Division standings, maybe a little bit ahead of the Coyotes.
Yeah.
But we expected them to be at the bottom of the league standings, right? Like when you trade Kirby Dach and you trade Alex DeBrincat like they did in early July prior to the draft, I mean, it's basically Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, and then a bunch of third-line guys, really. Like, all due respect to the Blackhawks, like, maybe you throw in Max Domi. He's had a good start to the season, right? But, I mean, this Blackhawks team is clearly one of the weaker teams in the Western Conference, but they've actually been very respectable thus far. And we'll get into the Blackhawks more, but I think there's no doubt that, Connor Hellebuck has been the difference, and he's solely responsible, as I mentioned, for probably a couple wins. Certainly the win against Vegas, the loss against Vegas, in which the Jets got the point. I mean, the Jets really had no business being in overtime in that game, right? So I think you'd point to that Montreal game, and you would say that for the most part the Jets, controlled the play. The Habs had no point. Speaking of the Jets, the Habs really had no point.
Earning that 1 point, getting a game into overtime.
Right, and so, I mean, you give a lot of credit to Sam Montembeault, obviously, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But, yeah, I think, there's no doubt that the Jets have to play a better team defense. They have to limit shots. Luckily, they're going up against a team that doesn't have, the superstar power that the Golden Knights do, even though you have to worry about guys like Kane and Taves and Domi. But, I mean, if the Jets play similar to the way they did against Montreal, they should easily beat Chicago.
Well, you talk about the Montreal game, Dave, and I think the Montreal game was sort of a game that in previous years the Winnipeg Jets may not have ended up on the victorious side of the ledger.
Okay.
Where they maybe played down to the level of their competition and end up giving up a late goal. But I've said this, throughout the start of the season so far, is that oftentimes, even when they're chasing a little bit, when they're down a goal, their game hasn't changed significantly. Throw away the first Vegas game, throw away the first Dallas Stars games. They just got beat badly in those games for sure, no question about it.
Yeah.
But that that they haven't changed their approach necessarily when they're down, because they were down to Montreal by a goal on 2 separate occasions.
Yeah.
And it took them about, I think it was about 10 minutes to tie it up after Montreal opened the scoring on Thursday night. And then it took them less than a minute to tie it up after Montreal retook the lead on Thursday night. So I do see signs from the Jets that they are staying within the program, whereas in years past, there'd be a lot more freelancing as soon as one thing goes awry.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the whole point. You got to stay within the structure that the coaching staff has been preaching. And, when you don't have your head coach there, it makes it a little more difficult. And obviously the rest of the coaching staff knows what they're doing. But you really want Rick Bowness there. And, I mean, our good friend Joe Pascucci had an interesting stat where he said that Rick Bowness hadn't won a game for the Jets as a head coach since like 1987 or it was like 34 years almost. It was like 33 years and 7 months.
April 1987 or something.
So, I mean, Joe always has great stats. He always has great video and stuff like that. So he's a great resource for anything Jets 1.0 and even sometimes 2.0. Joined us on on a post-game show. They try and chase the game in a way that kind of falls on bad habits. And, especially like when you are down a goal, as long as you play defensively responsible, you have too much talent to not be able to get that opportunity again. And so that's why, if the Jets can maintain what this coaching staff is trying to instill in them, then you're going to see that they can do it. And again, you can't afford, and as he's right, Jonathan Taves has been phenomenal. Yeah. He's got 7 goals in 11 games for Chicago. He's on pace for 50. He had 12 last year in 71. I mean, that guy is completely reborn. And he's like, I mean, it's funny. I saw someone talking about Chicago and like, well, we're not going to mail it in just yet. Like these guys, and it's true.
They have
like
so much pride.
Well,
Kane and Taves,
yeah,
especially.
exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting to see Taves doing what he's doing and putting up the numbers that he's putting up. But I think from a Jets perspective, as he's right. I mean, as long as you stay within your structure, you just have too much talent in order to not really be able to handle the Hawks team. You just can't overlook them because the Jets aren't an upper echelon team. So they can't afford, like, I think before what used to be the mantra or the mindset was, we are much better than our opponent.
Right.
And so we don't have to like respect them, even if they would never, of course, say that. But I think that was kind of like, that felt like that was the attitude. And then oftentimes they didn't start on time for those games. So now when you're not considered an upper echelon team, what ends up happening? You have to respect your opponent a little bit more and be ready for them. And I think now that's what you're seeing with the Jets.
Yeah, and I was going to add, like, we talk about this every time there's an afternoon game, but, I mean, these afternoon games, let's be honest, sometimes they start a little slow and a little sluggish, right? Like, it doesn't matter what team. We're not talking about the Jets here. We're just talking about afternoon games in general, right? Because we know, like, hockey players are programmed. Most games are at night. I mean, you get the odd afternoon game. So, I mean, that's even more reason why you want to get all the cliche good start and everything like that. But, I mean, I think it has to be mentioned, guys, that, I mean, obviously you don't want to look past Chicago, but you've got Dallas coming up. You've got a good Dallas team, a good Calgary team, and you're not going to have Ehlers and you're not going to have Morgan Barron. Like, we don't know. Like, it's, I mean, we'll get into that. I'm sure you want to get into that, Drew, but, I mean, the Ehlers situation is very weird because I think, you know, a week ago we thought, okay, like, Ehlers isn't going to play against Vegas, but most likely he'll be back either against Montreal or Chicago. Well, now it looks like, you know, Ehlers could easily be out another week. I don't think, you know, we're talking about a long term. Like, I don't think, based on what we know, I don't think Ehlers is going to be out for a month or 2 months or anything like that. But, I mean,
the healing process has been slower than they expected.
And we don't even really know what the injury is, right? Like, there's a lot of speculation what that injury could be. But, like, I know Drew's famous line is, you know, I'm not a doctor, but I'll take a look.
It's true.
You know what? I'm not even going to take a look here because it's all...
I actually once bought that shirt for a buddy of mine who's a doctor.
That's a great saying. But... So you're not going to have Ehlers for those games against Dallas and Calgary, and I mean, you're going to still hopefully, you know, be able to bank points, especially, you know, starting this afternoon. But don't get me wrong. I mean, there's no reason to think that the Jets are going to steamroll the Blackhawks. But the Blackhawks are that proverbial team that really only has, after the first couple lines.
That's right. You know who you have to target with your game plan.
Right.
I mean, not to say that you can overlook anyone, but you know that, you know, largely you're entering the game with the mindset of, we're not going to let Kane and Taves beat us. Because those are the real big threats on Chicago.
No Jones, he's out. He's on injured reserve, right?
Right. So the defense is weak, and that's being charitable. I mean, you look at the defense there, and those are guys who are all playing in roles that they're not suited
their top
for.
Pairing, Drew, is Jack Johnson, at least on daily faceoff. I haven't been following the Blackhawks a lot. The first pairing is Jack Johnson and Jake McCabe. Jack Johnson was a number 7, number 8 defenseman on Colorado, right?
That's right. And I mean, you got Jared Tenorti. I mean, Jared Tenorti is a guy who's bounced around and has been sort of fringe in and out of the lineup. You know, the Jets should be able to... Yes, there are plenty of examples on paper of areas the Jets should be able to take advantage of the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, that said, we don't know what this Jets lineup is necessarily going to look like for today's game because it was Rick Bowness yesterday in his media availability after practice, and I believe it was an optional yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. You'll know better than I would. It wasn't an optional? No. Okay. That the Jets he said there's going to be lineup changes.
It wasn't an optional, but Pierre-Luc Dubois and Mason Appleton didn't skate.
There you go. Okay. That's where I got that's where I got confused. But he said, you know, clearly he wasn't going to say what the changes are, but it's going to be a different lineup than you saw against Montreal because we know that Morgan Barron is going to be out of the lineup for 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
We know that, you know, Dominic Toninato played his first game of the year against Montreal on Thursday, but we also know there's other guys who are banged up and who are nursing injuries and, you know, who may or may not be able to go today. So, you know, it's going to be, we won't know that till later on, till closer to game time, because there is no, of course, morning skate, with it being an afternoon affair. But you're going to see a bit of a different Winnipeg Jets lineup than ended the game on Thursday against Montreal, Dave.
Yeah, it was funny because it was the end of the media availability. I believe Mike McIntyre of the Free Press asked Rick Bowness about that and about any lineup changes. He asked him if he expects anything. He goes, yeah, I do, but you know, you'll have to be at the game to see what they are. So he was perfectly vague in terms of his answer and and any specifics like you just said, Drew, will have to wait till warm up. So realistically, unless they do a media availability, I don't think they will for a 2:00 game with the coach. So you're gonna have to wait till about 1:30 to find out what the likely changes are going to be for.
And it could be, sorry, I was just gonna say it could be Jansen Harkins for Dominic Toninato, right? Like it could be that minor change, or as you mentioned, I mean Mason Appleton. We know that it was basically leading up till the game against Montreal, we didn't know if he was going to play. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it could be Appleton who's a little bit banged up. So Harkins could go in for Appleton, and then it begs the question: is Sam Gagner going to stay on the top line? Like, I think that's something we have to talk about because I mean, even though Connor obviously breaks his goal scoring slump, if Ehlers is going to be out for the next 2 or 3 games, I mean, it's important who you have on that line, and I don't know, based on the way Sam Gagner played, I would probably leave Gagner up on that line. But we've seen Mason Appleton, 3 or 4 times he's been up on that top line, and there's been varying degrees of success with that.
I think I would agree with you, Ezzy. I would start with Sam Gagner up on the top line because that first line, the Scheifele, Connor, Gagner line, started the game against Montreal with a number of quality shifts. Dave, you and I were up in the press box, Ezzy. I'm sure you saw it at home. There was a good performance from that line to start. Then the line blender did come out to start the third period on Thursday night, where you saw that switch again, where I think Appleton went up to play with them and Gagner dropped back down. But if I was Rick Bowness, I mean, I liked what Gagner brought there to start. I haven't been wowed by Mason Appleton in that role. I think he's playing a role that he's not necessarily. It's an elevated role. I don't know.
The game against Colorado, he really stood out.
That was the best
obvious
game.
Reasons, right?
That was the best
game. Like the OT winner where he, closes out the check on McKinnon, and, right? But yeah, I mean, there have been flashes, I would say, and nobody expects Mason Appleton to score 30 goals this year. Like, let's be honest here. But he is a guy, we talked about this after the Habs game. He has started every single overtime for the Jets this year, which is not something that you would really say, but I got to be honest, I like it. Like, people are saying, Scheifele and Connor should be out there, or, Dubois should be out there, with Perfetti. And don't get me wrong, I want to see Dubois and Perfetti out there for 3-on-3 overtime, but look at the results. I mean, the Jets have been much better this year in overtime, minus the Eichel goal, the Vegas win.
Right.
But Mason Appleton, even though he doesn't maybe offer a ton of offense as compared to some of the Jets' best players, I mean, the guy can skate. Like Rick Bowness, Scott O'Neill, they're not afraid to put Mason Appleton out there in overtime and in key situations.
Well, they're saying we need possession to start overtime, and that's certainly. I mean, it's clear.
Seems like a winning strategy.
Yeah, you have the puck. Usually, good things are going to happen. I think that's true in overtime. 3-on-3. It's also true at 5-on-5. It's not really a revolutionary thought process, but that's why he's saying, look, if we get possession with these guys, terrific. We'll give them a chance. But at the same time, if we don't get possession,
get off the ice.
Well, no. If we don't get possession, they're also defensively responsible. They can also, maybe try and neutralize the opponent who's usually out there with their biggest guns. Trying to, and you're comfortable in that matchup because of the defensive responsibility that those players bring to the game.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no question about it. That is one of the things you want from Lowry and Appleton is to be able to hold in. I mean, he's a great face-off man. So of course, if he wins it, you get possession. They can either attempt to, win the game, which they obviously did against Colorado, or you can have them, possess it until you can get Scheifele Connor on. So for me, I think that, it's an interesting strategy. And as he's right, it's not one that we would have anticipated to be employed by the Jets when you have the firepower like Scheifele and Connor and Perfetti and Dubois. But it has turned into a winning strategy for this Jets club. So you're not going to mess with it. You're going to keep this thing going because why wouldn't you, right? I mean, you find a ticket for success, you're going to keep running with that ticket. So I think that's not a bad plan for the Jets. And again, obviously you want to win games in regulation, right? You want to win games ahead of getting to overtime. But against a team like Montreal, you don't care. Because it's not going to be impactful.
It's not going to hurt you come playoff time standings-wise.
Right.
You're absolutely right. Jansen Harkins. I mean, you've been watching the Moose. The Moose defeated last night by the Texas Stars.
Not a good game.
Not a good game. You can touch on that later on in the show. I would expect Jansen Harkins to get into the lineup for tonight's game, this afternoon's game.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Because he performed so well with the Manitoba Moose. He went down there and did such a good job, that he deserved the recall. Obviously it came due to injury, but even if it hadn't been an injury situation, he'd played well enough at the AHL level to put his name into the conversation to come back up. You don't want to leave a guy sitting in the press box in that situation for longer than you need to. I understand why Tony Nato got the game on Thursday, because you want to get him at least some game action. well, at least because he hadn't played it yet this year. And then, but Harkins, I would expect to be, especially if somebody else is out of the lineup. But even if everyone else is healthy, it wouldn't shock me if Harkins comes in for a guy like Tony Nato or even a guy like Saku Maenalainen, who hasn't really, I think, stood out to me in recent performances.
Well, I mean, if you look at it from a standpoint of deserving, I mean, there's no question. I mean, Jansen Harkins has performed phenomenally well, and he's done everything he was asked to do when he went down to the AHL. And I've said this before. You know, guys aren't necessarily overtly. Some guys actually wear it on their sleeves. You can see it in their game that they're disappointed, that they're not happy to be in the AHL. Harkins just, I talked to him after the first game, and I just play minutes. Like, hockey is hockey. And at the end of the day, like, I'm a hockey player and I want to be playing games. So he came down, he had the right attitude, scored five goals in 5 straight games, actually almost scored like inches away from scoring in a 6th straight game before the recall. And he's feeling good about himself. And he did exactly what the Jets wanted him to do, Ezzy, was play PK. So that's what he did. He went down the Moose. He was on the PK, scored a beautiful shorthanded goal. Like, it's one of those things that you have a guy who goes down. He's playing the big minutes. Now it's a question of role, right? And personally, and again, like I don't know. I know I'm in probably the minority of this opinion, but I actually think if you give Harkins more opportunity, maybe in a slightly larger window size, maybe he can do something with it. You know, I remember, and again, I know it's dating it, and it was just one game, but in the bubble. Against Calgary, where he scored that goal when he was playing with Wheeler, you know, that I think you can get from Harkins if you give him a little more time, a little more opportunity. Now, some people think no, but like I said, I wouldn't be adverse to trying him a couple games with cerebral guys. He's a smart guy, defensively responsible. He has a decent shot, so we'll see if he can do it. But I mean, regardless, I think you get him in because he's feeling good about his game again, right? Like, he went down to the AHL, felt really good about his game, and yeah, you're going to bring him in because, I mean, this is the one thing I've never understood really from an NHL perspective, right? When we always talk about these guys who are dealing with injury, right? Oh, you know, there's always that, well, he had an injury last year. Well, if he had an injury last year, why did you play him?
Why don't you sit him down for a couple games?
Like, it doesn't make sense to me. You've got capable guys who can jump in. Like, I'm sorry, like, no offense. If Mason Appleton is not at 100%, then let him heal and get Harkins in because Harkins is feeling good about himself. You can get Harkins in to play the same role as Mason Appleton, in my opinion.
And that's the benefit of the depth that they have this year because in previous years, I think you were calling up guys that you knew really were not going to be able to contribute to the lineup and score goals. And Jansen Harkins, even though I don't think anybody expects him to score a goal a game pace in the NHL, he is a guy that has proven that he can score. Even though last year he obviously had a really disappointing year. I mean, whether it's Harkins or Toninato, these are regular NHL players. And you mentioned Saku Maenalainen. It seems like Saku Maenalainen has a guaranteed spot in the lineup. But I've said this to you guys before. I think I mentioned it on the last postgame show. I think Axel Jonsson-Fjällby has outplayed Maenalainen.
I would agree with that.
And they're different players, right, Drew? Like, you know, Maenalainen's more of a physical player, even though Jonsson-Fjällby is a guy that, you know, the word that always comes to mind with Jonsson-Fjällby is energy, and I love the fact that he shoots the puck a lot. Like, he's not afraid, even though he's a fourth-line guy who's expected to keep the puck in the other team's zone and do all of those cliche things, be that kind of energy line. I mean, he has a scoring touch, right? Like, we've seen that. So I don't necessarily know, even if Appleton and let's assume that the only 2 guys that are injured are Barron and Ehlers, I wouldn't be surprised if Maenalainen instead of Toninato comes out of the lineup. But, I mean, it probably would be Toninato. But regardless, I think what we've seen, and Chevy doesn't get a lot of credit. I think he deserves more credit. Like, look at Sam Gagner, Saku Maenalainen, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby as a waiver pickup. Sure. Like, even though the Jets didn't do a lot off season, all of the small depth moves that Chevy have made, these guys are actually contributing. Like, Gagner actually has been productive on the power play and at even strength. Maenalainen is a guy that you can put him on the 3rd or 4th line, and he's responsible. He can kill penalties. So even though these guys aren't 25 goal scorers in the NHL, they're just solid NHL players. So I agree with what you guys said. I think, you know, if Jansen Harkins does go into the lineup today, he's earned it, and he might stay there. I mean, he really might. He's the type of guy that I don't think will be happy with just playing 1 NHL game or 2 NHL games and, okay, you know, go back to the Moose now. No, if that's the case, he'll do it because he's a loyal soldier. But I think, like anybody, his ultimate goal is to stay up in the NHL.
His mindset is, I'm an NHL player because I've been playing the NHL for the last couple of years. Yeah. So when he got sent down to the Moose at the end of training camp, deservingly so, by the way, because he did not have a great training camp. He did not stand out at training camp, and the competition that was behind him or was equal to him at training camp performed better. So, you know, he had no reason to think or expect to be at the NHL level based on how he performed in training camp. So, you know, you get a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. That's not a bad thing. If he's using that as motivation to sort of find his game and fine-tune his performance, always have to get into the mindset of that this is what I need to do to be at the NHL level, then that's okay for the Winnipeg Jets, and that's just a good lesson learned for he's not a young player anymore. Sometimes guys need a little bit.
Well, he's young compared to us, Drew.
Well, everyone's young compared to us, as he. But it's a good reminder that this is how you need to. This is how I need to play in order to be an NHL regular.
Look, it's a wake up call is a wake up call, and guys have had it, and they get them, and that's what you need to have happen. Like Jansen Harkins, more than anyone, as I've documented, boys. Not a linear path to the NHL, right? Went down to the ECHL, came back up to the AHL, became a really good player, a point guy, eventually got that call up, stayed and stuck, and then for, like Drew said, for 2 years, he's been an NHL guy. Now all of a sudden he gets sent back to the AHL. That's a wake-up call. That's a message to Jansen Harkins, as you said, Drew, that you're not there. You've got to do something better. You've got to define yourself. You've got to be able to stick out a little bit. And the truth is, and we've seen it. And look, Drew, you're right. He might not have earned a recall based on like his performance, other than the injury necessitating him being called up. But the truth is, we've seen that before. Andrew Copp, Adam Lowry, both those guys got sent down to the Moose. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, neither one of those guys got called up again because of their play with Manitoba. So unlike Harkins, who actually played really well when he got sent down, those guys actually got sent down, and it wasn't as if they were blowing the doors off their AHL competition. But they got an injury happened with the Jets, so all of a sudden Adam Lowry comes back up. All of a sudden Andrew Copp comes back up. But guess what? They've gotten the message, and that's is that only the message resonating with them, and they're like, well, I don't want to be back in the AHL. The AHL's nice. I want to be in the NHL.
They get to talk to you. I would assume that was part
True.
of it, right?
That is a benefit.
That's the only benefit. Otherwise, it's 5-star in the NHL. It's more, maybe 3.5, 4-star in the AHL. Let's head to break. First break of the show. We're live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show at Red River X Place. The doors are going to open up here at 10 o'clock in the morning. But in the meantime, Ted Wyman, sports editor of the Winnipeg Sun, is going to join us live on the program. Stay with us, everyone. We are live on YouTube and at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's, and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning. We're back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. We're also live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show here at Red River X Place. Doors are going to open about 30 minutes. Apparently, there's a lineup outside already, so we're excited to see the massive flooding. That's all to see me. And then we're excited to see our next guest on the program. He's the sports editor of the Winnipeg Sun. He's our good friend, Ted Wyman. Teddy, good morning. Nice to see you. How are things?
Good morning, fellows. Things are great, and it's always good to be getting up on a Saturday to be on the show with you guys.
We appreciate that, Teddy. It's been a while. Hopefully the summer went well and everything else, but obviously we're right into the heart of hockey season. We're in the heart of football season. Curling season is right around the corner. I know you're a curling fan yourself, so lots going on. So let's get right into it, of course. And we're here, the Winnipeg Jets, 6-3-1 through their first 10 games. You got game 11 this afternoon against the Chicago Blackhawks. I think if you had said to most people during training camp, this team is going to start 6-3-1. They're going to be, right at the top of the Central Division or close to the top of the Central Division. Most people would have been pleasantly surprised by that development. What's your sort of takeaway on this Jets team so far this year?
I think my biggest takeaway, Drew, is that it's 6-3-1, but also 6-3-1 without playing their best hockey. I mean, honestly, there's been a lot of games where it kind of looked like maybe they shouldn't have won. Obviously, in Los Angeles last week, they fell behind in Phoenix. They ended up winning that game. They didn't really deserve a point in Vegas, but they got one because their fullback was unbelievable. So it's kind of like. You see that they're 6-3-1, and you realize that this is a pretty decent record, but you're still kind of wondering what this team is at this point. Obviously, fantastic result to this point. I don't think anyone would be upset with 6-3-1 because we didn't know what to expect coming into this season. In fact, most people expected maybe not as good, but this is 10 games into an 82-game season, and it's a sample size. It's not a big one, but it is. And that's not a terrible for sure.
Ted, we were talking about this right before you came on, possible changes to the Jets lineup. I know that you saw that Rick Bowness hinted that there could be a few changes, and that might depend on a few guys that are up. Mason Appleton is one of those guys, but what are your kind of thoughts on the makeup of that first line and what you see Rick Bowness and Scott Arniel doing? Because obviously Pierre-Luc Dubois, Cole Perfetti, Kyle Connor, that line was excellent against the Habs, and that line is you know what you're going to get out of that line, and you know what you're going to get out of Scheifele Connor, but right now it seems like they haven't found the right winger in Nikolai Ehlers' absence. So do you just stick with Sam Gagner? Do you go back to Mason Appleton? I realize that you're going up against a pretty weak Chicago Blackhawks team, even though they only have one less point than the Jets. But what moves are you anticipating? Just maybe Jansen Harkins going in, or are there maybe more of a line blender situation for today's game?
Well, I'm not going to try to pretend anything here. I was doing bombers yesterday, guys, so I wasn't actually at the practice, so I don't want to make it sound like I know more than I do. But, I mean, it's interesting you talk about that situation with Appleton and Gagner. I mean, I thought Appleton had a really good game. I mean, I thought he was really strong the way he was skating. And he has been really good on the top line with Scheifele and Connor in some ways. I mean, he's an excellent forechecker. He does move guys off the puck. He gets after things through using his speed, and he's a good grinder. But there's a reason why he's not scoring. He just doesn't have that great scoring touch. So obviously, they really missed Nikolai Ehlers in that situation because. You can see how dynamic Scheifele and Connor are. All you have to do is go back to that overtime goal against Montreal, and you know it. But you don't know just how good they could be with Ehlers on that wing. And I mean, that's been a perplexing situation with Ehlers, how long he's out. Don't think it was expected to be that long from the beginning, but it has been now. And the Jets could really use him back. It's an interesting point that you guys bring up, and that's that this lineup isn't actually optimal, and they've still gone 6-3-1. And I mean, that's something that they should, that there should be some pride in. Plus, they didn't even have their head coach for all but two of the games. The assistant coaches did a fantastic job, and a guy like Mason Appleton and others have done a really good job keeping all of that, or putting it all together and getting pretty decent results out of the team.
Saturday morning, we're live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show at Red River X Park. You're also live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. Ted Wyman of the Winnipeg Sun is our guest discussing the Winnipeg Jets. Jets in action, of course, this afternoon against the Blackhawks. The Illegal Curve postgame show right around 4:45 p.m. Central Time. So join us back here on our YouTube channel.
Teddy, one of the luxuries, I guess, that you could say that the Jets are going to have is Connor Hellebuck having an opportunity to really get a good run here, because there's not a lot of games right now, so you have to believe that they're going to run him out today, and because he didn't get overburdened against Montreal on Thursday night, and most likely against Dallas on Tuesday. So it's really nice for the Jets. I mean, as much as you want to be able to trust in Dave Rittich, to be able to use Connor Hellebuck when he's playing this well.
He is 2019-20 Connor Hellebuck right now, isn't he, guys? I mean, he's playing as well as I've seen in quite some time. He's just, that game in Vegas was quite incredible. I mean, and we're not just talking about making 46 saves. We're talking about making 46 saves with about 20 of them being scoring chances. I mean, that was really something to watch. And, he looks really motivated. And that's another reason, of course, why this team is off to a good start, because they've got one of the best goalies in the world, and he's on top of his game. So, yeah, I mean, the opportunity to use him here with a day off between games regularly is going to be really advantageous for the Jets. And let's not forget that David Rittich did go in against the Coyotes last week, and he picked up the win. He wasn't spectacular, but he certainly wasn't bad, and the Jets get a win in that game. And I think any time when you've got a goalie like Hellebuck and he's not going to go because it's a back-to-back, if that backup goalie gets you the win, that's a big bonus. The Jets have had a very, very nice goaltending situation so far this year.
Ted, it seems like it was only a matter of time until somebody spoke up on behalf of Ville Heinola, and that, of course, was his agent speaking to the Hockey News and to our buddy Jacob Staller earlier this week, saying, all Ville wants is a shot at being an NHL regular. It seems like there's something's got to give in this situation, and almost sooner rather than later. Yet, if it's not an injury-related situation, it seems like Ville is still earmarked for the AHL. How do you see this sort of playing itself out in the next couple of weeks, months, as this is continuing to almost be a bit of an issue, certainly from the player's perspective? I'm not sure if the team considers it as much of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been, at the start of the year, I certainly would have been surprised if someone were to say to me that we weren't going to see Ville Heinola at all this season in Winnipeg. I think we're going to with the Jets. I still do, but how does that come about? Well, it would be not great if it had to be an injury that brought it to that point. But the fact is, when the Jets went out and got Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon in the summer more than a year ago, it honestly kind of pushed back that potential spot for the younger guys who are developing. And Dylan Samberg has earned a semi-regular spot at least. He is in there right now. He did go in to replace Logan Stanley, but that's kind of a third pairing situation. And Matt, that's probably not what the Jets are looking for in Ville Heinola. He'd be more of a top four type guy. He's going to be a guy that would play power play minutes. Well, you got Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk right now. So it is an interesting situation, and reading those words from his agent, you can see that this is another one of those situations where there's some unhappiness, and that's not ideal for the Jets. This is a first-round draft pick. This is a player that they got back in a big trade, right? Like it's something that they looked, when they first had him in training camp a few years ago. He looked fantastic right off the bat. He was putting up points. He scored a goal before he got sent down for that first time. And then you thought, boy, it's just a short matter of time before he's going to be back up full time. And it just hasn't happened yet. So certainly understandable that there would be frustration there. But it's really hard to see how he gets up here and into the lineup, barring a trade by the Jets of some sort, to move one of those veteran defensemen. And I mean, right now, Josh Morrissey's playing the best hockey of his career. I don't see that happening. Neil Pionk has been pretty good this year. That pairing of Schmidt and Dillon seems dependable. The Jets aren't great defensively. Don't let me try to make it sound like they're world beaters back there. They're not, but they seem to be getting the job done. And Morrissey is having an excellent season. Now, that's the one player that you look at and say, Heinola kind of plays that similar style. I don't know that he's as good defensively, but he's certainly got the ability to distribute the puck and play that power play on the point and do all kinds of good offensive things. But, Morrissey's the guy doing that right now. And like, he's basically the captain of this team right now and their best defenseman. I just don't see there being a spot there. So it's really interesting. Would the Jets make a move? They're not that strong at forward right now, as you see with Nikolai Ehlers out of the lineup. They have a player in there right now who's not really a top six kind of guy. Maybe there's a trade to be made. I don't know that fans would love to see that, but I mean, you got to be exploring things, don't you?
Absolutely. And, to your point about Josh Morrissey, I mentioned that to Dave, when we were watching the game against the Habs in the third period. I mean, he had an unbelievable season, as you know, last year, Teddy, but it's almost like this year, not only has he continued that through, but he's elevated it again, right? Like, I mean, we're not talking, the Norris Trophy or anything like that, but like, he is playing like a legitimate, number one defenseman. And I mean, you saw him out there in overtime with Scheifele and Connor on the winning goal. So I agree with that. And, you mentioned, it's hard not to mention the forward depth for the Jets, Ehlers and Barron out of the lineup. I'd like to ask you Blake Wheeler, because obviously he got, the grinder goal against the Habs, driving the net on the Pierre-Luc Dubois rebound. I mean, just what are you seeing from Blake Wheeler? Because I'm seeing a guy who's responded really well from having the C strip from him. And he's also, producing offensively, when with Ehlers out of the lineup, and also guys like Kyle Connor struggling offensively. Like, I've just been I just want you to what kind of your assessment has been of Wheeler through the first 10 games, because he just looks like a guy who's not only producing but having more fun this year.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that, Izzy. I mean, I think he is having more fun this year. There's probably some pressure off, some weight off his shoulders. Being the captain is a big responsibility. And, I always felt like his personality anyways in dealing with the media changed from when he was just a regular player to when he became captain. It just seemed like he found that to be a real chore. And there was not a lot of let's say friendly engagement in that situation. I'm not sure that that's better at this point, but you can see. I really thought, and before Kyle Connor even said anything, I noticed that Blake Wheeler was the first player off the ice to hug him when he scored that goal the other day. And that's not to do that because they won the hockey game. That's to do it because he knows that Kyle Connor is struggling to get a goal. I mean, not struggling. He's not playing bad hockey, but he was struggling to get one to go in. He finally got one to go in. You could see the relief on his face as he skated towards that bench. And who greets him but Blake Wheeler? Well, that's a leadership kind of move right there, guys. And I mean, I think the points that Wheeler's put up are consistent with what he's done in other seasons. And I think that's great news for the Jets, that there was trade talk in the offseason. There was the captaincy being stripped of him, and yet he's still getting some things done for this hockey team. Is he a top-level player right now? I wouldn't necessarily go there, but is he fitting in well, helping bring along Cole Perfetti, at times playing with Dubois, at times playing with Scheifele this year, and playing a role and chipping in some points here? Yeah, he absolutely is. What more can you ask about?
Saturday morning, we're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. We're also live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show at Red River X Place. Here about Winnipeg. Of course, the doors open at the Ice Fishing Show in about 15 minutes' time. Ted Wyman of Post Media is our guest, discussing the Jets, getting ready for this afternoon's Jets-Blackhawks game, the Illegal Curve post-game show, 4:45 p.m. back here on our YouTube channel.
I want you to reel this one in for me. How good? You like that?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, you like that one? So but the one guy who really had to step up his game this year and has stepped up his game, both offensively and defensively, is Mark Scheifele. And, it's been really remarkable to see him return to form. As good as – and look, Connor Hellebuck is the MVP of this team. There's no question about it. He is the most important player the Jets go as Connor Hellebuck goes, but Mark Scheifele had to be the second most important player. He was going to be the driver of this team. And after the summer, there was that uncertainty. Well, it seems to be, and again, 10 games isn't the season, but it's a pretty decent number. It seems to be the Mark Scheifele of old, both on and off the ice.
Oh, man, it took him 10 games to get an assist. I don't know. 6 goals, though, right? I mean, and big goals. And he's scored them in a variety of ways, breakaways. He's had rebound goals. He's been getting down and dirty to get in there and get after pucks. And he absolutely looks engaged. I don't think he's ever going to be confused with a Selke Trophy winner. He's just not that kind of player defensively. But if he can hold his own and is in the right positions, then can be effective as a two-way center in the NHL. And I mean, I've noticed him being back. I've noticed him being in the right spots. I've noticed him being the guy that's picking up rebounds. Now, we all saw when Jack Eichel scored that goal the other night in Las Vegas that Scheifele was definitely the man who was covering him. He'd been skating around the ice with him for quite some time. It looked like Scheifele was bagged and just couldn't keep up with him, but it wasn't a good look. I mean, a lot of people saw that as a lack of effort. I don't think that it was, but I do think that he just did not have what it took to make sure that he was on his man and kept him from getting the net.
That's all he needed to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like something, right? But he didn't really do anything, and unfortunately, they gave up the winning goal. But he, in general, has been strong, as you guys said. We had a chance to talk to him in Vegas before that game and spent about 10 minutes with him. And it was interesting to hear how he's really focusing on the things that are important here and how he feels like there's some leadership involved in his role. Obviously, he's got an A on his jersey, and one of the things that Marty Johnson, the assistant coach, told us is that he's working a lot of extra time with Cole Perfetti, trying to help bring him along and to become a better hockey player. And Cole Perfetti, I think, has been really good, but he got down on himself after a bad game once, right? He needs guys like Scheifele, like Wheeler, like Morrissey, like Lowry to pick him up, and they did. And he came out the next day and got a great goal. So I think with Scheifele, you wondered where his mindset was last season. It wasn't in a good spot. He's talked numerous times, and I don't think he's specifically throwing anybody under the bus, but he keeps talking about how much more he likes this environment under this coaching staff than he did last year, and how much more coaching they're receiving. And I think that seems to appeal to him. And you can't argue with the results, guys. That's an endorsement of what Rick Bowness has done so far, and so is the 6-3-1 record.
Yeah, you mentioned Rick Bowness there, Ted, and I mean, I think it speaks to the change in voice that this team needed, and probably needed certainly before last season. But obviously, bygones be bygones, and whatever was done is done. But it just seems like Rick Bowness has been the breath of fresh air and the new sort of voice that this team desperately needed, and almost alongside with the decision to remove the captaincy from Blake Wheeler. It just sort of almost seems like the pressure was released in the room. With Bowness coming in and with the Wheeler decision, and they just seem like they're looser and enjoying playing hockey again compared to last year.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think Rick Bowness has done that. He's brought that in. Maybe that happens most times when you change coaches, right? I mean, it is going to be that breath of fresh air, but I think we have to give credit as well to Scott Arniel and Brad Lauer and Marty Johnson, who have handled most of the time on the bench this year with Rick Bowness out battling COVID. Great to see that he's back, by the way. Mm-hmm. But those guys, I think, have also done a really good job. And I think they've also been a part of that. I'll use more of a football term, culture, right? Like, I mean, there's something different about this team. You can feel it. You can sense it when you're in the dressing room. You can certainly, these coaches are very approachable. They're very, they're teachers. And I think these players are appreciating that. And that's, like you said, I think breath of fresh air kind of sums it right up. And it's been a team effort with those guys. And just to see how well those guys have done, like Brad Lauer said, we got thrown into the fire. I mean, we did. They weren't really ready to be running that bench. It was supposed to be Rick, but they were able to do it, even though their cell phones were blowing up at the time with Rick texting them everything they should say and do. But it was, I just think those guys have done a really good job, and that extends obviously to Rick Bowness, who's done a great job so far from his house while recovering from COVID for the most part. So far, so good, right?
Ted, I got to ask you about the Blackhawks, who the Jets obviously play in just a few hours. We were talking about earlier, they're only 1 point behind the Jets. So for the incredible start that the Jets have had, for a Blackhawks team that nothing really was expected out of them, they're off to a pretty good start. It's obviously the beginning of the Arvid Soderblom era. Won their last game in overtime against the LA Kings 2-1. I mean, it's a nice story, but I mean, is Kyle Davidson kind of saying, guys, like maybe win a few less games because we want to be in the Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli sweepstakes here? Like, what do you make of the Blackhawks record? Because it's nice that they're winning some games, but I don't think they want to be one of those fringe playoff teams, and I don't think they want to get the 11th or 12th overall pick. I think they'd be much happier with a pick in the top 3 or 5.
I don't know, as I think that's kind of outside observer media thinking. I just don't know that that's how they really think. If their team's playing well, they're playing well. They're going to be going for whatever it gets them. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to go the other way. Now, that being said, we've heard all year about how Patrick Kane is on the trading block. And I mean, he's their best player. He's their leading scorer right now. He's a Hall of Famer, both with the Blackhawks and in the NHL. If you're even thinking about trading a guy like that, you're certainly not thinking about winning in the playoffs and the Stanley Cup. But, So they're a bit of an enigma in that sense, but they're playing well right now, and the Jets are going to have to be aware of that. They're not far behind the Jets in the standings. They've been doing some really good things, and I think that I think this is going to be an interesting matchup here early on in the season, because these divisional games just mean so much, and the Jets had problems in their division last year, other than St. Louis, and they need to make sure that they get as many points as they can against these teams. It's going to be a dogfight for the playoffs, no doubt. And I think this is just that first of those big games against Chicago that are going to be a big part of that dogfight all season.
Saturday morning, we're live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show, the calm before the storm. The buzz is increasing here at Red River X Place. Doors set to open in 5 minutes' time. You can feel the anticipation building, just like that anticipation building as Ted Wyman of Winnipeg Sun sports editor is joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Teddy, I want to ask you about Kyle Connor, because he finally breaks the goalless streak, and obviously the first goal again, the empty net, but to actually get one in the overtime. I mean, this is a guy who's a career 15% shooter. He's shooting only about 5% right now, so it's going to return to form. Do you feel like, though, with him? I mean, obviously we've talked about it. The guy set grade A chances in that game against Montreal, so you could just feel like the dam was about to burst. Do you feel like it's ready to now with Kyle Connor, especially based on what him finally getting that goal against Montreal?
Well, absolutely, Dave, because it's not just that game against Montreal. I mean, you look at almost every game that he's played in recent in the last week or so, the ones I've been covering anyway, he was getting 6-7 shots every game. He was getting over 10 shot attempts. I mean, if you're getting that kind of opportunity, it's going to come, especially when you can shoot the puck like he can. And there he is in that play coming in. He's been having nothing but great chances all day. He can't get it to go. He could be hanging his head. He could be thinking, man, how is this ever going to work for me? But no, he just rips one off the post and in for the game winner. And that's really good news for the Jets because I do think that dam is about to burst. I mean, the guy had 47 goals last year. He's a sniper. He's an elite player. And it's about time for him to start putting up points that are consistent with being an elite player. And, I just think this team has done pretty well considering that their best, highest scorer hasn't really been scoring. And they're about to get the advantage of having him scoring, I think. It just looks like that puck is finding his stick a lot. He's getting off good shots. There's been great saves. There was one the other day with a beautiful passing play that got into the middle, and one of the Habs defensemen just got his stick in there and knocked that puck away. But there was one right from the slot where it looked like Connor was going to score for sure. There's just been a lot like that. Just little tiny things, a millimeter away from him sniping it top shelf. And and even in terms of how good of a sniper he talked about how he had gone high glove a few times on the Habs goalie. And then when he came in the last time, even though it's overtime and it's a high pressure situation, he's thinking, well, that didn't work. I'm going to go in a different spot. And of course, it worked this time. So I don't think Jets fans have too much to worry about with Kyle Connor. He's going to get his goals, and getting one is probably a big start to that, to a bit of a rush in that area.
Ted, in the last couple of years, it's sort of an easy tell that some didn't really watch the Winnipeg Jets was their assertion that the Jets are a big physical team, because that's what they were maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But for the last couple of years, they certainly haven't been that. This year, they're 7th right now in the NHL in hits delivered, just behind the 6th place Chicago Blackhawks. Does the physical side of the Jets, the fact that they've sort of maybe refound that identity, is that sort of helping the team in your estimation in knowing how they want to play night in, night out?
Yeah, I think it's an important part of what this team does. And then when they were at their most successful, it was when they were physical, right? And I mean, that's something that they need to have that. They need to have guys like Lowry, and we always know Lowry's going to do it. He's always up there throwing around the hits. They need guys like Dillon and Schmidt and whatnot to be hitting on the back end, and Sandberg. And they need to establish that physical presence as often as possible. And I cringe when you talk about hit stats in the NHL, because they're so incredibly inconsistent at the stat keeping level. You can see them throw. I'll sometimes be watching that event summary on the NHL.com game page, and it'll be saying 10, 15 hits in the first 10 minutes by a team, and you're just wondering how in the world they found that. I mean, maybe you sort of skate by a guy and your jersey's touching, you're counting that as a hit, but that's just a personal little rant as an aside there, guys. But I do think that the Jets are a better team when they play physical. They're not that big, heavy team. There's no doubt about it. But it's an aspect of this game that makes a big difference. And I think that Rick Bowness is the type of guy that is going to want a team that plays good defensive structure and physical hockey over a team that can fly and put pucks in the net at the other end without doing those other things, right? So if they can, that's all part of the template that I think is going to make this team good. They're off to such a nice start here. It'll be very interesting to see if they can keep it going. It's been somewhat smoke and mirrors, but if they're playing the game the way that they're intending to play it, and they did do it against St. Louis, they did do it against Montreal, they didn't do it at any time in between, we will see probably some similar results in the next 10 games.
Ted Wyman is the sports editor of the Winnipeg Sun. He's one of our favorites. He's a good friend of ours here at Illegal Curve. Ted, let you go on with Saturday. Thanks so much for joining us. Big weekend in the CFL. Who wins the divisional games?
Whoa, that is an interesting one. I'll take Calgary and Montreal.
Okay, there you go. He's on the record. Teddy, thank you for this, and have a great rest of the weekend. We'll do it again real soon.
Great to see you guys. Have a great show.
Thanks, Ted. Doors are open here at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show live at Red River X. The folks are beginning to stream in. We'll head to break. When we come back, much more on the Jets and the Chicago Blackhawks. And Craig Button joins us at the bottom of the hour. It's a Saturday morning. We're live on location. We're on YouTube and all our social media platforms. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly, see lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now, live on location at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show at Red River X Place, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, live on Facebook, live on all of our social media platforms. We are live is what I'm trying to say. Ezra Ginsburg over here, Dave Minuk over here. I am your host, Drew Mindell. Again, big prop. Producer Tim doing a great job getting us live and in living color here at the Red River X Place. Gentlemen, still to come on the program, Craig Button at the bottom of hour number 2. Craig is always a great insight. You see him in the intermissions, and the Jets on TSN broadcast, so always looking forward to catching up with Craig. And again, a reminder, the post-game show today, 4:45 p.m. Central Time, back here on our YouTube channel after the Jets and the Blackhawks do battle. I asked Teddy about it, Ted Wyman, when he joined us during the interview, about Ville Heinola and his agent's comments. I mean, you can attribute them to the agent, but you know it's the player also speaking through the agent to some degree. Dave, you're around the Moose more than anybody else. You know, what were your sort of immediate thoughts when you heard the comments, when our B. Jacob Staller wrote out the comments? What did you think of the comments from Ville Heinola's agent?
Well, I thought they'd ignite the firestorm that they ignited, so
mission accomplished.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised when I read them, but I mean, look, Pascal Vincent used to say, and it's not wrong, like, you don't want guys to be happy to be in the AHL. Now, they have to have the right attitude when they're, like we talked about Jansen Harkins. He wasn't happy to be in the AHL. Mm-hmm. He just said, I'm going to do whatever I have to do, and that's just the reality. And I think look, Ville's still a relatively young guy, and unfortunately for Ville Heinola, the biggest problem for him is he still wavered him for 2 more years, right? So the reality is his contract status works against him, and so he's in a tough position because, but the truth is, and if anybody watched the game last night, against Texas, there's things that Ville Heinola still needs to work on, right? I mean, he left Curtis McKenzie wide open in front of Arv Holm and then Oskari Salminen on the PK. And you can't do that. He let him get position on him consistently. He wasn't strong enough in front of the net to box out the player. Now, the one thing about Ville that is an advantage is his intellect, right? He is never going to be a big physical bruising guy. So he has to use his intellect to get that puck off of the guy to prevent that. But in a PK situation, that's a problem when you're not boxing out and you're allowing the opposition's goal forwards to take away your goaltender's eyes. So, I mean, there are elements to his game and the attitude that he's got nothing left to learn at the AHL level. Like, I can't stand when I hear that because, like, guys, unless you're an elite, like, unbelievable number one, like, everybody has to learn, and it's not a bad thing to be able to develop your game and to play. And someone tweeted at me yesterday saying he's basically third pairing. I'm like, no, he's top pairing. Like, it's, between...
Hang on. Somebody was telling the Moose Insider what was happening with the Moose?
Well, people have opinions, and that's fine. But I'm just saying that he really knows, like, the pairing defenseman on the Manitoba Moose. He's a top pairing guy, along with 2019 second rounder Simon Lundmark. And I think and by the way, there's a nice right side prospect that a lot of folks don't talk about. He's another guy who's going to take some time to develop, but he's developing nicely with the Moose. I just think that we are in such an instant gratification society. Guys, I'm not so old that I don't remember how many people tweeted at me that Josh Morrissey was a bust because the 2013 first rounder had been some in the American Hockey League. Guys, it happens. It's not the end of the world. These guys will get there. They'll get their opportunity. Now, again, you want Ville Heinola to be hungry. You want Ville Heinola to be interested in playing in the NHL. And I understand, like, I agree with what Ted said. When the Jets brought in, I think the biggest mistake the Jets have made, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the Jets are infallible here. I think the Jets made tons of mistakes playing guys like Tony Vitello instead of all their young prospects. I mean, the problem is they created an artificial logjam earlier, and then they brought in guys like Brendan Dillon. They brought in a guy like Nate Schmidt that created that. And look what you lost. You lost Johnny Kovacevic, who's now second pairing. We saw our friend Mark Dumont, an excellent article about how Johnny Kovacevic has really developed well, and he's playing 17 minutes, played 20 minutes against the Minnesota Wild for Montreal. So the Jets have definitely made mistakes in their development, and it's cost them because you lost a guy that you spent time and energy investing in and developing, and now you lost him. Ville Heinola, they don't have to worry about losing him because he can't go anywhere. He's waiver exempt. They've got him under contract. I mean, obviously you don't want the player to be pissed off, but at the end of the day, he's in the situation he's in, and it's incumbent on him to just do everything he can at the AHL level that when injury comes, he's going to get the call. Because remember, guys, Declan Chisholm, the 2018 fifth rounder, he damn good, and he was the best left side defender for the Moose in the playoffs last year. So it's as if Ville Heinola is the next one up. Like, he's got to earn that right. Now, he probably will be the next one if they need a left side guy, but I'm just saying it's not a guarantee. And so I think that we just get ahead of ourselves, and people like, he's already done everything he needs to do at the AHL level. Okay, I watched him last night. He didn't look like a guy who'd done everything he could do to learn what he needs to do at the AHL level. So there's growth, there's development. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think he'll be a better player for the Jets and for Ville Heinola. It gets that seasoning and learns under Eric Dubois. Look at all the guys who are having success who have been able to go through that process.
I think you and I can go do some axe throwing. Dave's just going to take the show for the rest of the time now. You and I can go over there. Dave's got this handled. You and I will go walk around some of the booths here at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show. Now, perhaps your opinion on this Ville Heinola and his agent's comments.
I think I agree with everything that Dave said there. And first off, I'm not surprised at all with it was Alain Roy, I believe.
That's right.
And a good job on Jacob Stoller. It was a good article. It was a good scoop. And, I think when you talk about Heinola, he's not going to get into the Jets lineup right now unless there's some injuries, right? Like, clearly Dylan Sandberg is the guy with Logan Stanley out of the lineup. We know that Morrissey and Dylan are your top two left side defensemen. So right now, I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. Unless you have one or two more injuries on the blue line guys, Heinola is going to be playing in the AHL, right? So everything that Dave said about, developing in the AHL, right? He's not a 25 defenseman. Because he's playing with the Moose doesn't mean that, he's a bust or anything like that. And, he does have a lot of room to grow. I think when you're a first round pick, the expectations are always higher. We always know that. But I think, people need to also take a step back and, realize, just because he's not playing big time minutes in a top four role in the NHL, that, somehow that means that, he's no longer a top prospect in the system. Mm-hmm. It's a real thing though right now, guys, for Ville Heinola, right? And we saw this coming. Like the way I kind of summed it up at the beginning of this, you're going to have two young defensemen on the left side in your top six. As long as Brendan Dillon and Josh Morrissey are there, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, at his contract and with his NHL experience, Brendan Dillon is not a seventh defenseman or a guy that's going to be a regular healthy scratch. I think he's actually played. I agree with Teddy. I think I love Brendan Dillon with Neil Pionk. That's the pairing that I like the best. I realize that, when there are injuries and you have to move it around, and we saw, Logan Stanley and Nate Schmidt. I just thought that pair was an absolute disaster, but I just think as it stands now, Heinola is in the AHL. Unless things change, and for me, it's got to be multiple injuries. Like, I just don't, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to alternate Dylan Samberg and Ville Heinola in the lineup? I mean, what good does that do?
That would be
Samberg?
To the detriment of both of them.
Well, exactly. And Samberg has played several years in the AHL. He's earned his time. And, yeah, did he come back and was he a little bit slow? But I think he's been very solid, certainly over those last couple games of the road trip and last game against Montreal. So, yeah, not surprised by the comments. It's just something that we knew that was going to happen. And it's probably not something Heinola wants to hear, but he's going to have to spend the majority of the season in the AHL unless, like I said, you have some injuries, and then the opportunity comes up for him to play on the third pair or the second pair or whatever. But right now, it's just a numbers game. The Jets have that logjam on the left side, and I don't see that really changing. I don't think anybody expects a trade to come. Like, I realize that, Elliot Friedman stirs the pot. That's what he does. But the Jets aren't making a move right now, especially with Logan Stanley injured. I just don't see it.
Well, let me reference what Elliot said, which is what you just mentioned, is that Elliot on the 32 Thoughts podcast, and Dave wrote about it on the website, illegalcurve.com. Thank you, Dave. He wrote that teams are calling the Winnipeg Jets because they see that the Jets have an abundance of defensemen. And, the truth is, though, the Jets are not at this point going to make a trade on the back end because that would leave them thin when it comes to the defense. Logan Stanley's out of the lineup for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, Logan Stanley has not been a world beater. He's not been overly impressive. I don't think you want necessarily, if Logan Stanley is a regular in your lineup, I'm not sure that's a great thing for the Winnipeg Jets right now, given where Logan Stanley is in his career arc. So, if the Jets, trade a defenseman, be it one of their current six or be it Heinola or somebody else, well, you've lost Kovacevic. You do have some other prospects in the system, but I don't think anyone is expecting Simon Lundmark or Declan Chisholm is saying that they're ready to jump into the NHL level. All of a sudden, you take an area where you might have an extra guy, but then you would leave yourself as being more thin on the back end than you would want to be, because we know, because teams talk about it, that it takes usually 10 or 11 defensemen to get through a regular season.
Yeah.
With injuries, with everything else that can happen. So you don't want to leave yourself too thin and all of a sudden you're scrambling for defensemen.
No, absolutely. And that's kind of the conundrum for the Winnipeg Jets, right? Is to figure out how are they going to do this? How can you, especially when you have a thinness up front, which we see now with Nikolai Ehlers absent, and you don't know. Again, that's the big kind of unknown right now with this Jets team is what is Nikolai Ehlers' status? He's played 2 games right now for Winnipeg. And we talked about it. This was the year the Jets were going to need Nikolai Ehlers to take that next step, be the top guy, be the top guy on power play 1. And now you don't have that. So you know that without Nikolai Ehlers, look how thin you are from a forward's perspective. And you do have some reasonable depth, like I've talked about with the guys who are with the Moose, like the guys who are champing at the bit, ready to get into that opportunity. The Ville Heinolas, the Declan Chisholms, the Leon Gavankes, those guys all want opportunity. But, again, like you said, Drew, on the right side, because you lost Kovacevic, you now have you don't necessarily want to put Lundmark in this year, maybe at the end of the year, but I mean, I would think he's more for next year. And then, Gavanke probably could handle it. He's probably, you want to get him into an NHL game if you could this year, I would think. See what you've got in him, longer waiver exempt, but you want to see what you've got in him, I would think, at some point. And again, I think Chisholm, as we saw, got that opportunity last year.
He's probably closer than a lot of people think.
Well, he is. He's a phenomenal skater.
Yeah.
And his skating, I talk about it all the time. He's got unbelievable skating, and his passing is phenomenal. I mean, the guy he's got NHL class skating. There's no question about it. And his anticipation is very good. Him and Leon Gavanke work phenomenally well together. But yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily want to give up on a guy like him because he's kind of right there, I think, with Heinola in terms of abilities, and like he does a lot of the same things. Right? He's a little bit bigger than Ville, but he's not actually. Ville plays a more physical game than Declan Chisholm does, but it's an interesting sort of disparity between them and a lack. And so you know that you have the luxury, as you would put it, to sustain a number of injuries on the back end and, be able to fit in new guys. And that's kind of the concern with the Jets team, right? You don't want to lose your back end depth, which is what you have, in order to maybe fill the forward depth, which you're not even sure about. So right now, can you plug and play a guy like Jansen Harkins? Maybe he's got the memo. Maybe he's ready to take a step up, that sort of thing. And there are a lot of guys who are capable, in my mind, that could fill roles if you need as depth guys on the Jets team. Now, if you're looking for a top 6, are you going to get that from a trade? I don't know. I don't think that one of these defensemen right now are getting you a top 6 forward in the NHL, and that's all you need, because you've got the guys like Kevin Stenlund, Mikey Esimont, Jeff Malott, there are Christian Reichel. You've got a lot of guys who can fill that third, fourth line if you need to call it.
You're not making a trade. I think we can talk till the cows come home about, Villanola deserving a shot in the NHL. But I think people have to just accept right now he's in the AHL. And he might be for the whole year. And I think also people have to accept that with Ehlers out of the lineup, Morgan Barron, you touched on earlier, Drew, he's going to be out 4 to 5 weeks. With Logan Stanley injured, this is not the time, I think, that Chevy wants to make a move. Like, for all of the talk of Chevy's inactivity and only making a few minor moves like David Riddick, Sam Gagner, right?
Yeah.
Why would you make a move not knowing the status of Nikolai Ehlers, right? Like, why would you make that with Stanley lineup? To me, that's not even on my radar, and I don't necessarily think it's on Chevy's radar. He's not thinking trade right now. I think you're going to wait to see how the next 5 to 10 games, and you're going to wait to see, how Ehlers is, over the next days and weeks. Like, this is, to me, just not at all a time when any Jets fan should expect a major move.
The Jets don't make major moves in season unless it's right at the trade deadline. I mean, history is the best indicator of future behavior, and to expect a random mid-season trade would be so out of character that you'd be foolish to think that it's coming.
And the Jets are playing really well. Like, at least in terms of the record, right?
The record is
6-3-1, right? So, again, look, Elliott does a fantastic job. There's probably no one more connected, with maybe the exception of guys like, Drager and LeBrun and Chris Johnston. But I think people should just, hold the brakes. Like, with talk about being happy and the Jets having a logjam, Stanley's injury throws things off. I realize Stanley on this team is more of a number 7, number 8 defenseman. I just think you have to factor all of these things in here, right? Could the Jets make a move at the point I would expect that to be closer to the midway point of the season or closer to the trade deadline. Then that's when you decide, what are you going to do with some of these guys with expiring contracts?
Unless they find out that whatever is ailing Nikolai Ehlers is a significant long-term injury that might cost him months, which there's no indication that that's the case. He's not healing well from whatever is ailing him. He hasn't had surgery, he hasn't gone under the knife or anything like that. So unless they find out some other news regarding that injury, I wouldn't expect the Winnipeg Jets to do something to augment that top 6 right now. I don't see, it's not in character for them to make a move like that. Right now they're saying, look, we're 6-3-1. Have we been playing tremendous hockey? No, we haven't been. But we're also in a lull in the schedule where you play today against Chicago, you play Tuesday, then you play Saturday, Sunday next week. So that, if you can get Ehlers back by, after maybe next weekend's games, and we don't know exactly when it's going to be. We just know it's been healing slower than expected. Mm-hmm. But if within a week or 10 days, well, we're really only talking about another 2 games, another 3 games. So it's not something that you all of a sudden have to go press the panic button and try and that time.
Well, it wouldn't make any sense anyways, because why would you, when you are having success, regardless of the method of getting there, you've now gotten to your destination and you're 6-3. Why would you make a trade now in order to facilitate something when you're right, Drew, unless there is something that we don't know, right?
The Jets want to start playing better, more complete hockey, right? Like, that's their focus right now. They want to put together 3 solid periods, not 1 good period,
right,
or 1.5 good periods like we saw in LA, right? That's the focus. This has become a bit of a distraction, and I get it. I think it really comes down to what Heinola did in the World Juniors, right? Top defenseman for Team Finland. He's a first-round pick. I think anytime a first-round pick isn't a starting player by the age of 20, Same with Logan Stanley at 21, 22 years old. People are saying, well, he's a career age AHL guy. Well, look at what he did in the bubble, right? The two big goals in the sweep against the Canadiens in the second round. So the Jets are focused on who they currently have. I don't think they're worried about who they could possibly have and moving guys. I just don't think now is the good time.
I would agree with you there, Mr. Ginsburg. We're live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show at Red River X Place. The doors are open. People are filtering in, swarming in, streaming in, whatever adjective you want to use. Ezzy's family is going to be on site, so if you want to meet the real brains behind the operation, they'll be here at some point in time, I think before 11 in the morning.
My kids are for sure going to get lost. Like, there's so much going on here. There's no doubt in my mind that they're going to get lost in like a tent.
Well,
at least Ruben will for sure.
You're not one of those parents who puts their kid on a leash or something.
No.
Like that.
Naomi puts me on the leash.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's just want to make sure there.
We do adult leashes in our household.
That makes look. Whatever happens in the privacy of your bedroom is your business and your business only. There's an image for the rest of you for the remainder of your night.
Good night show.
Yeah, exactly. And we're done. Anyways, the Jets and the Blackhawks coming up in about less than 4 hours time. Post game show again, 4:45.
I love the 2 o'clock start. I got to say, I'm all about the 2 o'clock start and the 9 o'clock start.
How is the 2 o'clock start the least bit convenient for you?
It's not really, well, it's not about me, Drew, but I just
Then
like the
who's
fact
it
that you
about?
have the whole night in front of you. Like, we're going to do the post-game show around like 5 o'clock, maybe 4:45.
Yeah.
And I like it. And then we'll be done at 6, and then we can go hit.
What does that entail you with 2 young children, may I ask?
I'll be in bed by 7:30.
There you go. Exactly. That's what I expected the answer was going to be. But, I'm looking for, with regard to this afternoon's game, I'm looking for the Jets to get off to a strong start. That's what I think is going to be an important factor. I mean, I thought that they got off to a pretty decent, even though they got the first goal to Montreal, and they largely controlled the pace of play. I thought the first 5 minutes of the game, Dave, you and I were both there. They
humble brag.
Not a humble brag, but I'm just saying that they started the game strong. They were swarming. They had stuff at zone time. They got off to a good start, so that they sort of knew by the virtue of that start that, look, this is a game where we should be able to control the pace of play against the Montreal Canadiens team. And they should absolutely be able to control the pace of play, control the flow of the game against a team like the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, we looked at the Blackhawks back end in hour number 1.
It's not good.
It's not good. I mean, it's not good. Now Arvid Soderblom, who's going to be in net for the Blackhawks, has been playing some pretty good hockey to start this year in net for him, but he's very untested. He's a young goaltender. I don't think he has 10 games of NHL experience yet. So again, it's important for the Jets to, get traffic in front of him, take away his eyes, make life a little more difficult for him, and I think that will allow the Jets to quickly maybe assert themselves in tonight's contest.
Yeah, like we should mention that. I mean, there's injuries. I don't know if Peter Mrazek is going to be backing up Arvid Soderblom, but Alex Stalock is out of the lineup right now. And we should give Stalock a lot of credit. He's played the most games for the Hawks, and he's played well. Like, Stalock is a guy that everybody remembers from Minnesota, from San Jose.
Right.
He was a number 1 goalie in the NHL. And so I think Stalock deserves a lot of credit for a journeyman goaltender on, let's be honest, not a very talented Blackhawks team.
Yeah.
He's done a really good job.
Dylan Wells is apparently the backup goaltender.
Right.
And now I'm going to ask you for some in-depth analysis about Dylan Wells.
I don't know a lot about Dylan Wells. I don't know a lot about Arvid Soderblom, aside from the fact that, he's a young goaltender, I believe 23, played a little bit American Hockey League, but most of his career, Dave, has been played in Sweden, right? But he's played, 2 games or 3 games, got the win against the LA Kings in the Hawks last game. But look, with all the speed that the Jets have, even without Ehlers in the lineup, I mean, they should be able to take advantage of a Blackhawks defense that doesn't have Seth Jones. Even with Seth Jones in the lineup, this isn't the best group of defensemen, right? But when you're talking about Jake McCabe, Jack Johnson, Jared Tenorti, who's up there, we talked about that in terms of NHL hit leaders. I think he's top 5 in the NHL. But I mean, on most teams, Jared Tenorti's not cracking your top 6. All due respect to Tenorti, right? So. I mean, the Jets should be able to take advantage, whether it's the Scheifele line, Dave, whether it's the Dubois line, even if it's Lowry's line with Manalainen, and then who else is on that third line? I gotta check right now. Who else is on the third line? Lowry, Manalainen, and who am I forgetting about?
It would be
Jansen, Harkins, or Appleton. There you go.
Harkins. We're not sure.
Right.
We know there's going to be changes.
The line has definitely had a lot of players on it so far this year. Lowry is the only staple. So you should be able to take advantage of that. But look, the Hawks are obviously a team that, they've developed an identity. They're the only way they're going to win is if they outwork, and obviously, Kane and Taves have been doing the majority of the offensive damage, but there's no doubt, just based on skill on paper, the Jets should be able to take advantage of a pretty thin Hawks team.
Yeah. As he stood up pretty well there, Dave. But that's sort of, as I said, the start to the game I think is important for the Winnipeg Jets, so that they got those good vibes early, and they sort of, Chicago's one of those teams, you let them hang around, they think, hey, maybe we can steal a game, we can get a couple points. As you've seen, they're punching above their weight so far this season, where they are in the Central Division standings. I mean, that's very much, I would say, an unexpected spot for the Blackhawks to be, in a playoff spot, and firmly in a playoff spot. Right now.
Well,
now it's early.
Yeah, we're 11 games into the season. I don't even know if we should be talking about playoff spots. I don't think.
Yeah,
although they are in a playoff spot, Dave. That's why I asked the question, Teddy Wyman of the Winnipeg Sun. How happy are you if you're Kyle Dave? I realize athletes are trained to win. Players play to win. They're not going to go out there and say, hopefully we win. No, they want to win every game. But I'm just saying, the Blackhawks, I think, would be much happier if they were in a draft lottery situation. I don't see this holding up, is what I'm saying.
I agree with you. At the end of the year, they will be in the draft lottery situation.
And especially if they move a guy like Patrick Kane.
Well, that's a no-brainer. Of course, if you
have to move him.
I would expect that. He's going to be a well-sought-after individual. But, you look at Chicago, they give up a lot of goals. They're, top 10, right? In terms of, or I guess bottom 10 in terms of goals against. They've given up 35 in their first 11 games. Mm-hmm. So it speaks to the defensive weaknesses on the team. It speaks to the Jets' ability that should be the Jets' ability to take advantage of an opponent with a weak back end.
Yeah, just to get back to one thing, as you said, though, when you talk about it, just chill at only 11 games in. It's funny because I already see people tweeting the Jets' opponent in the Central all lost tonight. I'm guys, we are come on, we can't be
looking at November 5th.
Yeah, we can't be looking about whether Nashville lost in regulation or something like that.
Somehow the Avalanche are going to end up firmly in a playoff spot.
Well, maybe not if by U.S. Thanksgiving they're not there. But anyways, no, actually it's funny because folks in Manitoba who follow the Manitoba Moose will of course know Arvid Soderblom because he played in that series opener against the Manitoba Moose to kick off the 22-23 season, in which he or split. He's a good goaltender. He's an undrafted goaltender, but at the end of the day, the Jets need to. I 100% agree with your assessment, Drew. You need a fast start. You need to get on Chicago because Chicago isn't feeling bad about their game now. Chicago's feeling good at their game, and they got Jonathan Taves, like I said to start the show, going better than he's gone in years. So Jonathan Taves on pace for 50 goals seems out of this world, and yet there it is. So I think it's absolutely something the Jets have to do. They need a good start. You can't have we didn't get our good start in the first period. No. This is one of those instances where you absolutely have to come out, house on fire. You have probably a good crowd. You think it's an afternoon game. So we'll see what happens. But you need a quick start, and you need to get all of Chicago because these are critical points that you have to bank. And that's one of the things we talk about. Again, it's too early to think playoffs, but it's not too early to talk about banking points that you need to have at the end of the year.
Especially against division rivals. Craig Button, TSN, director of scouting. You see him on all the Jets intermission shows. He joins us next on the program. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. We're also live at Red River X Place for the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show. Come on down here. Come say hello to us. We've got some great merchandise that we're giving away as well. Don't go anywhere. Much more of the program still to come. Craig Button up next.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to Illegal Curve, live on location at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show at Red River X Place. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Ezra Ginsburg to my left, Dave Minuk to my right, hoping to be joined by Craig Button, TSN Director of Scouting. You know him from his analysis during the intermissions of the Jets broadcast, the TSN Jets on TSN broadcast. There's going to be another one this afternoon, 2 o'clock. Puck drop in downtown Winnipeg. The Jets and division rival Chicago Blackhawks will do battle. The Illegal Curve post-game show back at 4:45 p.m. Central Time this afternoon as these two teams will meet each other for the first time this year. The Jets looking to improve on that 6-3-1 record. 2 straight division rival games. Of course, you have today against Chicago, and then the Dallas Stars are in town on Tuesday. The Jets are going to look to avenge that early defeat in Dallas, where it was quite a one-sided defeat at that. That was game 2, if I'm not mistaken, where they went into Dallas on a Monday night, and the Stars reminded the Jets that not all is well just because you won your season opener. And the Jets going to look to avenge that come Tuesday night against the Dallas Stars. You know, it's been a good start to the season for the Winnipeg Jets, and we talked about this in the first hour. It's not a perfect start by any stretch. Nobody has said it was, and the players themselves know that there's more that they have to do on a day in, day out, night in, night out basis if they want to change their perception around the league. Look, 6-3-1 is good. Playoff spot is good, but I think the perception of this team, still based on their performance so far, is that they are a middle-of-the-pack team, no matter what their record may indicate so far.
Yeah, we talked about this on the last postgame show. Like, if you would have said at the beginning of the season that the Jets would be 6-3-1, but that would include Kyle Connor only having 2 goals, one of which was an empty netter.
Yeah.
Nick Ehlers was going to miss 8 of 10 games. And also the power play was struggling. Those 3 things. Yeah. Ehlers out, Connor not really producing goals, and then the power play struggling. You'd be like, how does that make any sense? How are the Jets 6-3-1 right now? Well, it's been by committee, and it's been guys like Sam Gagner contributing. It's been getting a goal from Fiel. A lot of fans heard of before they acquired him off of waivers, right? So if you factor all of that in, even though the Jets have had some games like against the Kings, like against the Golden Knights, like even for stretches of that game against the Avalanche, even though the Jets came out really well, I mean, in the third period, like they were hanging on for life and they got it done in overtime. But yeah, I think the Jets know that, Ehlers is going to be out a few games. Morgan Barron is going to be out for a month. Like, they have to step it up. They have, especially against a team like the Blackhawks, even though they're pesky and physical, and they're 1 point behind the Jets. Even if you don't really want to talk about standing in playoffs right now, which we obviously shouldn't. I mean, the Jets are going to have to play pretty well to beat the Blackhawks. And Arvid Soderblom is a guy that not many there's going to be Jets fans that look at who's starting a goal for the Blackhawks.
It's not Corey Crawford.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it's not Corey Crawford. It's You're not Antti Niemi. Like, it's a third string goalie right now with Stalock and Peter. By the way, I just laugh at Peter Mrazek struggling because he's a guy that a few years back was a pretty good goalie for the Red Wings, and now his career. I'm not laughing at him, obviously. What I mean is,
sounds like you were laughing at him.
No.
I mean, Leafs fans laughing at him.
Leafs fans couldn't get him out of Toronto quick enough, so he has really struggled, but he is out of the lineup right now.
It's injuries have affected him. Dave, as he touched on it, the power play and special teams, the
Chicago's power play. Sorry, Drew, just wanted to say, Chicago's power play right now is ranked 6th in the NHL, and yes, it's only 11 games into the season.
Doesn't matter.
But you got to be careful. Got to give them credit. Their power play. I don't think their PK has been very good, but at least their power play pretty impressive. That they have top 10 power play with not exactly the deepest. Not groupist, deepest group of forwards.
No, so groupist isn't a word, is what we're going to go with. Well, you talk about special teams, and this is still an area of concern for the Jets, I would say, Dave. Mm-hmm. The penalty kill has maybe solidified a little bit in the last couple games. It was never a 5-alarm fire like it was at the beginning of the year last year. If you remember back where the Jets were almost guaranteed to be giving up a goal or two on the PK, but it wasn't great to start the year. And the power play, and I know Steelers, that impacts a lot, but the power play is still, they got a goal against Montreal, but that was more of a one-man effort by Pierre-Luc Dubois, opposed to sort of working around especially well. Power play a little lethargic still, still a work in progress for the Winnipeg Jets.
No, there's no question, and that's one of the areas Brad Lauer obviously is trying to refine for Winnipeg and try and break some of the patterns, but it's an area, like as he said, it's an area that's of surprising concern for Winnipeg team that has the firepower it has. But guys, when Kyle Connor hasn't scored a goal in like 8 games, that's partly your reasoning, right? I mean, Kyle Connor is a guy who's going to have success on the power play. Mark Scheifele is a guy who's got goals this season already, but those are the guys you want to perform on the power play. Cole Perfetti, Blake Wheeler, like those are the guys. And there is, I agree with you, Drew, a little bit of a not a laziness, but a slowness. And that's one thing you have to remove because, if the passing isn't good, the NHL, even the AHL, we saw it last night with the Moose, their guys are too good. And if you aren't crisp, you aren't passing the puck on the stick, then the guy is on you and you're not going to get set up and it's going to kill your momentum. So this Jets team does need to move it a little bit quicker and make faster decisions, and I really do think it'll happen. So
that's pleased to be joined by Craig Button. Craig, of course, we brought you on. We got you on mid-bite. That's usually a perfect timing, as per usual, to start talking. That's how you usually do it with John or Dan on the intermissions. But of course, Craig, nice to see you, TSN Director of Scouting. You know him, of course, from his intermission appearances on the Jets on TSN broadcast. Nice to see you, Craig. How are things?
Yeah, nice to see you. Where are you guys broadcasting from?
We are broadcasting live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show. So, very apropos here in Winnipeg. Of course, it's getting close to hard water season. The lakes and the rivers aren't quite frozen yet, but they're going to be frozen, maybe not November, but let's say mid-December, January. So the ice fishing show going on all around us. So we're pleased to be invited here to broadcast, and obviously pleased to have you here broadcasting alongside us.
Well, do you guys ice fish?
I personally don't, but it might be something that I get into. Dave is the fisher of the group, so I assume he's been out there once or twice before.
My brother-in-law is supposed to take me, Craig. I'm not a big summer guy, but I plan on getting into ice fishing a little bit more.
We're taking notes. We're just soaking it all in.
Hey, when you're in a winter climate, you better find things that are adaptable to the winter. And anytime you can go fishing, ice fishing or otherwise, then you can get some good catch. I mean, that is good eating, and there's good eating when you're fishing in Manitoba or northwestern Ontario. I know that firsthand.
Absolutely. Honestly, another thing you can do on ice is, of course, play hockey, and that's obviously why we brought you on. The Winnipeg Jets, 6-3-1 through their first 10 games of the season. A better start than I think a lot of people maybe would have expected when this team was starting the season. You've watched a lot of the Jets, as I mentioned. You're on a lot of the broadcasts. What have you seen from this Winnipeg Jets team so far this year?
Well, let's start with the record, and I'm gonna paraphrase Rick Bowness. He goes, it's a good place to be when you're 6-3-1, and you know that you have areas that you can be better in. And so, given the choice of being 3-6-1 and playing really well, or 6-3-1 and knowing you can play better, I think that the Jets find themselves in a good place, especially considering, Rick Bowness has not had the opportunity to really find the consistency behind the bench because of his illness, and with that comes a real understanding of the players and him being able to really get his message through in the course of a game. I mean, it's great to be in practice, but in the heat of the moment, where the coach can really be the voice that just reassures, that directs, that commands, I think those are really important things. So given everything that Rick Bowness went through, 6-3-1, I think is something that the Jets should be feeling really good about. I go back to the St. Louis game that they played, the 4-0 shutout. And I think that if you ever wanted to take a template and say that's the template that a team would like to play with, I think that is the one for the Jets. I mean, as that game carried through the first to the second to the third period, they were skating downhill versus a St. Louis Blues team at that time that was playing pretty well. And I think that when you see all those things come together in the manner that they did, I think that's when Rick Bowness says we're capable of being better. He's trying to find those stretches of really good play and eliminate those moments where they lapse. And those, we've seen it in the past seasons where, they play really well and then they lapse. And it's not just, I mean, there's going to be moments in a game where the other team is going to challenge you and they're going to get their own opportunities. But when I use the word lapse, I'm talking about your own actions that put you into peril. And I think we've seen that from the Jets over the past few seasons, time and time again. That's what Rick Bowness has to eliminate from this team. And whether it be a bad penalty, whether it be a bad positional mistake, running out of position, those are the things that he has to dial into. And I heard you guys talking about the penalty kill. The penalty kill is much better this year. I mean, the Jets' penalty kill last year was right near the bottom of the league. The power play, I think, has had some good looks and some good play. They keep missing the net. I did it on the game the other night. I mean, I showed about 6 chances that they had where they moved the puck well, and they keep missing the net. It's the famous Wayne Gretzky line. You don't score on 100% of the shots you don't take, and that goes with missing the net. And I think they got to, because even when you think about the goal by Blake Wheeler, think about that goal. It was a good play. They got the puck to the net. I mean, it wasn't a power play goal, but they got the puck to the net, and then Wheeler's hunting it. When you miss the net, everybody's got to regroup. You got no chance to go get a puck near the net. So I would say that for the power play, better start hitting the net if you want to start having success.
I with you 100%, Craig. I don't think Drew Dave are going to disagree with that at all. And I wanted to ask you about Josh Morrissey. I mean, he's obviously on pace for 80 assists, so everybody knows he's going to hit that. But, I mean, Morrissey really well, Craig. We've talked to you about him a lot over the years, going back to when he was drafted back in 2013. I mean, he had a great year last year, but it seems like to me at least that not only has he continued that, he's almost elevated his game to another level. And I don't think anybody should be surprised if they've followed his career. But what have you seen from Josh Morrissey through the first 10 games of this season? He's obviously, producing offensively, but it's not only that, like he's controlling the flow of the game at times.
And that's really important when you think about attacking as a team. If you're not capable of moving the puck from your own zone out of your zone and then be moving with the puck through the neutral zone, you can forget about anything in the offensive zone. I don't care how many skilled players you have. So what does that come back to? That comes back to really good defensemen that can get to pucks and then make the good decisions, either carrying the puck or moving the puck out of the zone. Josh is 27 years old now. So, I think last year was a really solid year for him. And I think that as he's built on it, Josh is a player that's not a hesitant to initiate play and everything. I think like a lot of defensemen, they learn as time goes on that less is more. And, you watch players, and I always write this in my notes. Don't take a wrong step and don't take a step in the wrong direction, because now you need to take 2 steps to get in the right direction. 2 steps in the National Hockey League is a lot of steps. And I think that, like, young defense, well, they come in and they're rambunctious. I get it. And you know, but now, when you use the word control, I think that's what you see with Josh. He's going to step up at the right times. He's going to manage the play defensively. Offensively, the puck comes off his stick. He was always, as a younger player, you know, through junior, he was always a good offensive player. Not a top-end offensive player, but a good offensive player. And I think when you have these forwards that the Jets have, getting the puck into their hands, getting the puck where they can handle it with the requisite amount of time and space to do something to further the first play, I think that's a real key. I mean, one of the things, and I'll be honest with you guys, it irks me when I hear about first assist, second assist. I think there's first assists that stink. And I think there's third assists that are never handed out that are really important to a play. And I think that if you don't have those, Kevin Sawyer always uses the word connected. And you need to be connected with the puck in your discipline, in your position. You need to be connected with the puck. And hockey is a connected sport. You know, like the quarterback gets the ball and he throws it down the field, and you know, the receiver catches it. Yeah, the quarterback gets credit for it because he's the guy. But there's more than one play in hockey that matters. And so my little rant is on first assist. Yeah, they're significant, but let's not diminish second and third and fourth assists of plays that continuously help a team be successful. I think that's where Josh has really, really become solid. And by extension, his game has opened up in other areas in a real positive manner.
Craig Button is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all our social media platforms. We're also live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show at Red River X Place. Get ready for hard water season. It is busy in here, and of course, everyone is gathered around listening. Yeah, Craig is casting and reeling in and catching. Everyone's gathered around listening to Craig give his tremendous insight into the Winnipeg Jets as per usual.
You know, Craig, 2 years ago when we unexpectedly got a chance to look at Cole Perfetti in the American Hockey League, we saw a young player, you know, a top adjust to the game. You saw the intelligence. You just knew it was going to eventually come. And we saw he was getting most of his points from the perimeter in the American Hockey League. And then suddenly something switched with him and he went to the interior. And then he started getting his points from the interior, from the hard areas. And eventually seeing that transition. And I know there was consternation here in Winnipeg when Andrew Koppel left and when Paul Stastny left. Who is going to fill that void? I actually was don't want to put too much on his shoulders, but I thought Cole Perfetti probably is a guy who can make that adjustment and get there. How have you seen him so far through the first 10 games with the Jets?
So Dave, I'll go 3 places here. Number one, I really like the fact that he's playing with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler. I think, you know, they're big bodies, they're bigger players. So, you know, that gives him you know, that element where those players can carve out some space and hang on to the puck and everything. Because as you point out, Dave, Cole is really smart. So that's number one. I really like the fact that he's with those 2 guys. Number 2, Cole, as you point out, is a really smart player. I think the fact is that as Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler get accustomed and acclimated to, you know, the patterns that Cole's going to play with, and Cole with them, I think you're going to see the productivity continue, like just get better and better. Because Cole is a player, when the puck is on his stick, he's thinking about plays that maybe are still unfolding and might not be obvious, but he's patient with that puck. And so when you're a player playing with him, you know, okay, I'm going to have a little bit more time. He's not going to throw the puck away. I don't have to be hesitating. Think, oh, if I go here, am I going to have to chase a puck there? And such a good passer. So as Pierre-Luc and Blake get more comfortable with that, I think you're going to see Cole's attributes and skills, you know, become even more significant in there. The third thing that I'll say about Cole is that when you have Kyle Connor playing in front of you, you now don't have to be that guy going up at this point in your career where you're facing the other team's top players, the top defenders, right? So I think that allows Cole an opportunity to be in a spot right now with the support of Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler, and with Kyle Connor playing in front of him, where he can manage his game where he's at this point in time as a very young player. And I think that all those things are significant in not only terms of how you're playing, but in how you're going to grow in your play. And I think as we move forward, Dave, we're going to continue to see that from Cole. One of the things that happens, and I know we talk about Cole. I mean, he's the 10th overall pick, and we talk about the American Hockey League. Players are smart, and I say this in this regard to an 18-year-old playing in the American Hockey League. The players are stronger and they're bigger, and sometimes a 18-year-old player knows that he can't get inside and can't compete physically and strength-wise versus the bigger, stronger players. So, it's one thing. I always say this about young players when I watch them. I'm going like, is it a lack of willingness or is it a lack of the physical maturity? And I think in Cole's case, it was a lack of physical maturity. He understood that. So why am I going to go beat my head against the wall when I have no chance to have success? Now, that's not what they drafted him for. And I think we're seeing as he becomes stronger, he becomes more confident. And now he is playing on the interior. And that's where he's going to be really effective.
Craig, you look at Mark Scheifele, and I mean all the negativity that was swirling around him last season, especially as the season ended. Then you look at his start to this year so far. Do you see a player who maybe took some of those criticisms to heart and is sort of re-engaged in how he needs to be an effective player? I mean, he was effective last year, but there's more. It's almost like he's not going to be Patrice Bergeron, but it seems like he's recommitted himself to at least being a reasonable defensive player.
Well, my belief is that I think that Mark can be a really good two-way player. We know that he has a star offensive ability, and we've seen that through his career. And I think he, along with a lot of the Winnipeg Jets players, the details of the game, not stopping on pucks, circling past plays, that's a discipline that you got to get dialed into on a daily basis, on a shift in, shift out basis. You fall out of it, and then it's hard to get back into it. When Rick Bowness became the coach, I really felt that he was exactly what this team needed, exactly what the players needed, because there was I've never had to worry about the offensive part of the game with the Winnipeg Jets. It's been about their game without the puck and those details. And so when I watch Mark play, I have no question that Mark I think he can be a really good defensive player because he's smart and he can skate and he's got size. But you got to put those disciplines into place, and it's hard. It's hard to play defense. It's hard to play without the puck, and you got to dial into it all the time. And I think that what we're seeing from Mark is exactly that, a commitment to that, and to finish with on a comment on your first words. Mark Scheifele himself wasn't happy with the way the year went last year. He said he was embarrassed, as other players said. So now you're embarrassed. You want to show that that's not who you are and what the team is. So now you got to come out and play. And I think there was an impetus for Mark and others to really show that whatever the narrative was around the individuals in the team, that we're going to show that it's different than that. And I think that that's a positive, and I think we've seen that from Mark. But to your point, I think Mark has lots of runway to be a really good defensive player. Just because you might have faltered a little bit doesn't mean you can't find that, because it is a discipline about details, and it's a discipline about hard work and dialing in and being determined without the puck as much as you are with the puck. And I think Mark has all those qualities.
Craig, as Drew mentioned earlier, the Jets and Blackhawks starts in 3 hours. Of course, you can view the game on TSN. And I got to ask you just about the start, right? Because the Blackhawks are only 1 point behind the Jets, even though they've played one more game. But, I mean, is this just a credit to not only Luke Richardson, but just the veterans of this team? I don't think anybody's expecting this to roll back to 2015 and the Blackhawks are going to win the Cup this year. But, I mean, look, nobody really expected much out of the Blackhawks, especially after they traded Kirby Dach and Alex DeBrincat. Just what are you seeing from this Blackhawks team early on in the season?
Well, I'm going to go right to the coach. And you mentioned Luke Richardson. If we rewind a little bit to the 2021 Stanley Cup playoffs, Luke was a big part of that defensive effort by the Montreal Canadiens. And it really started to take place. They lost Game 4 to Toronto. And I'll share this with you real quick. Montreal had scored 4 goals in the first 4 games. They were down 3-1. They were going back to Toronto. We were doing some segments into the next game, and I was thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to have to go in here and just talk about how it's over for the Montreal Canadiens? And so I went and I rewatched Game 4. And I rewatched it really closely, and there was a couple of things that I noticed. Number one, they got down to 4 defensemen. Well, that's under Luke's domain. Number two, they were playing a style of game that said to Toronto, you're just going to be, you want to play outside, and you want to keep the puck. You can keep the puck for as long as you want, as long as you're outside the dots. We're going to let you stay out there. We got Carey Price in the net, and they had those big defensemen. And I said, and so I going into Game 5, I said, okay, here's something that I've noticed that if they continue to do that. They did that all the way to the Stanley Cup final. And that's on Luke Richardson. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about I'm back to discipline. I'm talking about details. I'm talking about having your team play, despite maybe not having as much talent as you'd like to have. And you point out about a championship team, and Blackhawks are not that. You can still play a way that's really responsible, really disciplined. And that's exactly what Luke's brought to the Chicago Blackhawks team. And, that's where coaching. I always look at coaching and go, coach's job is to maximize the abilities of the players and the potential of the team. And whatever the abilities are and whatever the potential of the team is, that's a coach's job. And that's what Luke is doing in Chicago right now. They're not going to challenge for the Stanley Cup. They're not going to challenge for a playoff spot. But that doesn't mean that Luke's not doing a really good job. And the Jets best be ready for a team that plays that way, and that the Jets, with their skill, and if they dial in like they did against St. Louis, like in the last number of games, I thought, I know the game in LA, they got behind and they found a way to win. But there was times when they got back into the game that they're really good. Start out strong and then continue to play that really good, detailed, disciplined game. And I think that the Winnipeg Jets are a far superior team, but the Chicago Blackhawks aren't going to just hand it to them. Winnipeg's going to have to earn it.
Craig, when the Jets brought in Brendan Dillon, and Nate Schmidt, they created a bit of a logjam. They allowed their prospects to marinate in the AHL, which, some guys, especially young kids, all want to play in the NHL. Nobody wants to be in the AHL. Pascal Vincent used to say, we want them not to want to be in the AHL, but they got to learn here. They got to develop here, and then they'll earn their spot. There was an article in the Hockey News about Ville Heinola from his agent talking about how he's getting frustrated playing in the AHL and wanting that NHL opportunity. Now, I watched him play last night against the Texas Stars. McKenna is way in the net, and that's one of those things that Ville Heinola is going to learn, and he's not going to be a 6'5", murderer in front of the net. He's got to use the smarts. But how do you organizationally handle that when something like that goes in the Hockey News and then it creates a buzz? What does the organization do to react to something like that? Or do they do nothing?
No. I mean, it's there. I mean, so the Winnipeg Jets, I mean, they're right there. They got their finger on the pulse of their young players and the development thing. So what it is it's a good problem to have all this depth, but there's just going to be some challenges with it, right? And as you just pointed out, the challenges. Ville's a good player. He's a confident player, and he's a young player, and he wants his opportunity to play, right? So the dialogue's always ongoing, right? With a young player, from the coaching, from the development group, and and you're trying to really emphasize to the player some of the things you pointed out. Okay, we're not going to ask you to go and be a big physical force like Dylan Sandberg or Brendan Dillon, but we need you to be really good positionally. We really need you to not put yourself in vulnerable positions, move the puck quick, play fast and everything, and then go from there. And I think that you're trying to keep the player's optimism high. At the same time, that he's looking around him, and it's not just in Winnipeg. He's looking at his peers around him, going, that guy's playing in the NHL, and that guy's playing in the NHL. It takes a lot of regular time, a lot of time spent with the player for him to really feel all you're doing is helping him be the best player he can be so that he can get to the NHL and stay there. That's not easy to do, Dave. Trust me, it's not easy to do because there's a lot of competing forces going on. But the Winnipeg Jets have shown that they can be patient with their young players, that they're going to work with their young players. And when they do get to the NHL, they stay there. I think that's the message you're trying to convey to Ville right now. And at the same time, and I would assume they've done this. You would ask other players, that have seen him. Maybe, hey, go talk to Ville about your own situation. Like Logan Stanley. Logan, go and talk to Billy. But sometimes peer-to-peer is sometimes a little bit better, even though they hear the words and they understand it. Peer-to-peer, I was where you were. Don't worry. Keep doing the things that are here to help you. Not easy to do, Dave, but I think that if you look at the Jets' blue line and you look at the depth that they have, like I said, a lot of teams would love to have that problem.
Craig Button is TSN's director of scouting. You know him from his analysis during Winnipeg Jets intermissions. Craig, always appreciate your time, always appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. We'll do it again real soon.
Yeah, we will. It's always a pleasure to join you guys, and hope those lakes freeze over soon so that everybody that's spending time at the ice fishing show can get their gear and put it to good use.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, Craig, we'll let you know how our ice fishing careers go here.
I want some video. I want some video when you're out there.
Craig, I've already worked out with one of the guys. We may be doing a show on Red River, coming in one of these beautiful ice shacks. And let me tell you, this shack word is not appropriate. It's absolutely spectacular. So there's lots of really cool things we might be doing.
Well, I can only tell you this, Dave, real quick. So I have family up in I have family from Thunder Bay all the way to Winnipeg, lots of it, but in northwestern Ontario, up in the Sioux Lookout region. And you talk about they're not shacks. You know what? One of my cousins, I mean, he's got it so decked out you can sleep in the bloody thing. I mean, it's like you never even know you're out on the lake ice fishing. So you can soup them up pretty nicely. So I know what you're talking about.
The only problem when you do that is Ginsburg snoring scares away all the fish, so you can't have that happen. Craig, thank you for this. Appreciate it.
Have a great day. Thanks.
Take care, Craig. We'll do it again. Craig Button, TSN Director of Scouting, joining us here Saturday morning live on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show here at Red River X. There's people clamoring to get on stage after us, other presentations to come. So we will.
Siemens, I believe, actually.
There you go.
That's why people are already gathering. I don't think they're gathering for us.
They're not gathering for us. They're gathering to see us get off the stage. Ezzy, your family's here.
Hey.
Ezzy's kids and his wife have walked in. So we're going to wrap it up for this Saturday morning. A big thank you to everyone here at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show, all the exhibitors, all the organizers, all the attendees.
Timmy.
Our producer, Tim Debenham, did a great job making this a reality. If it wasn't for him, I promise you, we wouldn't have been able to pull this off. So tremendous job by producer Tim. The Illegal Curve post-game show coming up later on this afternoon, 4:45, back on our YouTube channel and back on all of our social media platforms. We have to say thank you to all the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the Saturday show, the post-game show, the website a possibility. Obviously, the good folks here at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, Grid Park, and The Keg. Support these fine businesses because you can support Illegal Curve Hockey. Big thanks to everybody for joining us in the chat. We'll see you back in a few hours. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on YouTube, live at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show, live on all of our social media platforms.